We figured out that there's a much better way to capture the change that happens in our environment by taking a completely new approach.
Welcome to UpTech Report. This is our Apply Tech series. UpTech Report is sponsored by Terraleap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. I'm excited today to be joined by my guest, Rema Matevosyan. Based in Brooklyn, New York, she's the co-founder and CEO at Near Space Labs. Welcome, Rema. Good to have you on.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on.
And I got to continue to practice my Russian pronunciation of names to be able to get that perfect. But I'm excited to be able to talk about Near Space Labs. You guys are an Earth imagery company, and I have always been a fan of space. We've only covered a couple topics in the past on the series about it, but we're getting close to the topic, near the space. You guys are focused on flying robotic balloons, getting to the edge of space. Help me understand, though, Rema, what's the problem that you saw in this space and set out to solve?
Yeah, so, I actually didn't grow up in Russia. I'm not Russian. I grew up in Armenia. It's okay. It's just, I lived in Russia for a few years. I know people get confused. So I grew up in a small country that doesn't have space program. And as you, I was also fascinated by space and aerospace in general. And when actually I ended up in Moscow, I made my move towards aerospace. And that's kind of when we saw the problem and decided to start a company with my co-founder. So the problem is that it's actually not a secret that we live in a highly urbanized world that is changing very quickly, right? So climate change and the heightened risk of rising sea levels and disasters make the need for highly updated, high quality Earth imagery data more and more critical, right? So we saw this while working as researchers in Earth imagery space and actually designing constellations of satellites for the European Commission. We figured out that there's a much better way to capture the change that happens in our environment by taking a completely new approach. So with currently we're helping a number of industries to get access to high resolution, frequently updated, and cost-effective Earth imagery data.
2016, you launched Near Space Labs. When did this first idea, though, start to ruminate in your mind?
So we actually launched the company. Yeah, the idea started looming in 2016. We launched the company in September 2017 when we moved to United States. It's actually a funny story. We moved and joined an accelerator within like a 2 weeks notice. So I literally flew and moved countries from Moscow, Russia to New York, and launched the company.
Just a few things happening at the same time for yourself. Just a few. Speaking of change, though, that's honestly a big piece of what you're looking at imaging. The reason why you're doing all these robotic balloons is to be able to track more cost effectively the change that is happening. Let's look at the technology for a second. Where does your weather balloons, what are they called? Is it called Swifty? No, Swifty?
Swifty. Yeah.
Swifties, I like it. They go to, does it 60,000 to 85,000 feet? Is that what that is?
Yeah, so our robotic balloons fly at about that altitude in the stratosphere, so twice higher than airplanes, 60 to 80,000 feet altitude, correct.
And it simply is just, all right, bon voyage, we'll send you up, and it takes care of itself. Like, I'm just curious, let's just starting with just the actual, how does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually design, build, and operate our hardware. So we have a proprietary device. The Swifty is proprietary. It's a robotic device, autonomous. It ships, fits in a box, ships in a box, works with a flick of a switch. So essentially what happens, an operator on the ground straps the robot on a helium balloon and flicks the switch and launches the balloon. And the rest is autonomous, right? So the balloon flies in the stratosphere, capturing high resolution data of the ground.
How long can it stay up there until it has to come back?
So it flies about less than a day right now. We are looking to increase the persistence of our balloons more. And then, so it flies for less than a day and then comes back. We retrieve it and we can launch it again and reuse it multiple times.
The opportunity for this, like who is the target market? Obviously, one is government. I can definitely see that. And if we look at specifically the President Biden signing in that executive order and then it just closing or in Congress for, can you describe what that actually is and what does that mean?
Mm-hmm. So see the trifecta of resolution, frequency, and cost was something that the industry was trying to achieve for decades. So with our new technology that we actually commercially launched during COVID, which is a whole other story that we can address probably, we were able to enable a number of organizations in mostly commercial space, actually. Most of our traction currently as a company is within the insurance space. We also work with the conservation industry. And as you mentioned, infrastructure in general, and with Build Back Better bill finally signed into law, there are going to be a number of opportunities with state and local governments to help them monitor large-scale infrastructure projects. There are so many roads in the country that require surveys and repairs, for example, bridges. I know New York will have a number of new exciting projects coming up with this President Biden's bill. So, we are very excited. In particular, as it comes to, let's say, insurance, what we do with our high resolution imagery, we help the insurance industry and companies in insurance industry automate premiums and claims processing. So, for example, right after a disaster, we're able to, with our nimble technology, we're able to launch like within 24 hours and deliver crucial data that helps the industry save 30 billion in losses a year. Because the status quo delivers information about an event, best case scenario, in like 5 to 7 days, which is already too late. With our nimbleness, we're able to solve this problem for the insurance industry once and for all.
So it's both speed as well as cost that you're fixing for the insurance. So something happens, you're able to get the balloon up within a day or two? Is it like very quickly?
Yep. So that's correct.
For this kind of imagery, what you're providing back, is it just like, all right, here are high resolution shots of the space, and then they take that and then start to diagnose what happened?
Correct. Yeah. So with our currently 10 centimeter resolution imagery, it's like roughly the size of a tennis ball. So with that resolution imagery, you're able to see debris on the ground, assess the damage on the roofs and damage that happened to the buildings at scale, right? And without needing to send people to like essentially what is a disaster zone to do this manually.
Is 10 centimeter industry standard, or give me context?
So essentially what you're getting with Near Space Labs is the highest resolution imagery at the lowest cost. So 10 centimeter is best in class and very well tuned to serve these needs that we're discussing.
So insurance is the most immediate and
Right.
makes the most sense of someone needing this on a regular basis when natural disasters or things come through. What are other use cases that you see either right now or could be coming down the road?
So our company recently raised a Series A that was led by Crosslink Capital, and Toyota Ventures joined as well. So with our new partners, we're also excited about autonomous driving. So one of our long-term strategic goals is actually building the next generation of navigation apps and maps that will enable autonomous driving. You and I can use Google Maps very easily, right? And navigate ourselves from point A to point B. We're probably a little smarter than most of the cars. So for cars, you need more updated and higher precision data for them to be able to navigate their way. So that's, for example, that's another strategic use case that we are working on. As I mentioned, infrastructure is very interesting for us and very important as well, and impactful, both in terms of how we monitor continuously the status of infrastructure, whether that's dams, bridges, roads, airports, or how we build new infrastructure, right? And like, how do we monitor the progress on this large scale projects that, with President Biden's bill, for example, will be actually happening all over the country.
Things that you'll be monitoring of, what's the frequency that something needs to be checked and monitored? Because if you're going up, flies for a day, though you're planning on increasing that, what's the frequency that someone needs these type of imagery?
So it varies from use case to use case, of course. But what we are able to do is essentially provide multi-daily update rates for large metropolitan areas. So this becomes very crucial when, for example, a large-scale event is happening with, say, projects like monitoring how a bridge is being built. Probably weekly imagery and weekly frequency is important enough. Excuse me. And I think the key here is that we're so nimble that we're essentially able to tune in terms of timing, frequency, and resolution, and deliver exactly what the customer needs and when they need it. Does that make sense?
You would have to drive out, fly out to wherever it would need to be deployed, and then deploy it at that spot, and then for that frequency, it would just continue to be deployed.
So essentially, yeah. So we have operational hubs in the country. And that's how we scale, and that's how we do many flights, right? Yeah. So it's not that, if, we're based in New York, for example, I'm based in New York. If we need to launch in SF, we need to take a flight, cross-country flight to fly our balloons. We do have hubs all across the country that help us quickly spin up operations.
Coming back to different use cases and stuff, one thing that's in the forefront of a lot of law changes, as we just discussed, and even some investment companies, is the focus on climate change, and also tracking the effects of climate change. Right. How does stratospheric imagery help combat the effects of climate change?
That's a great question, and thank you for that question. So a couple of things that I want to mention. First of all, we are actively working on launching sensors that will help monitor emissions, both thermal and greenhouse gases. With our Nimble technology, what is very cool is that we're able to iterate on our hardware with the speed of a software, like development, essentially, right? So we can fly our Swifty, test a new device or a new technology on the Swifty, land it, launch it again. So that enables very fast development cycles. So we are already fast tracking for a number of new sensors that will enable monitoring methane and monitoring heat island effects, which, for example, in Manhattan, the best way to track heat island effects, you'll be surprised, are simulations right now, because we actually don't have high resolution enough data to do this in a very data-driven way. So there are a number of applications like that we can help and support. And then I think when we talk about climate change, it's also important to talk about equity, right? So when it comes to access to imagery, the highest bidder, the status quo was such that the highest bidder would get the highest resolution data. Now, there are countries like Armenia, where I was born, like there are dozens of countries on the planet that don't have access to high-res data. So stratospheric imagery, and our company in particular, Near Space Labs, will help those countries get access to information that will help save lives and protect ourselves from the effects of climate change. Does that answer the question?
It does. I mean, there's a lot to look at, and as you said, it's in some ways you're trying to democratize the access to this so that more people can look at it and be able to make better decisions, better educated thoughts. And there is a lot of need depending on even just climate change. I'm curious when it comes to things like, like sea level rising. Mm-hmm. Is your solution, Swifty, good or the right method for monitoring wilderness areas and tracking these sea level rise?
Absolutely, yes. So high resolution imagery is on the forefront of number of climate change related applications, and including sea level rise. Yes.
What are you most excited about? Like when you built this, you were fascinated with this whole industry, got into space. What is driving you?
I think we touched this a little bit throughout our conversation today. So democratizing access to space in general is something that drives me personally, and bringing this very crucial data to every single corner of our planet, and making sure that whoever needs it, whenever they need it, they can get access to it is a very rewarding and exciting mission for me to work on.
I imagine building this over the last 4 or 5 years is not a simple road. Not just like, okay, great, yeah, let me create a space balloon that just goes around, and it was easy, no problems at all. Or am I wrong? Was it easy?
There were a few complications, throughout.
Like, if we come back to the technology just for a second, I mean, flying up at that space, that height, mm-hmm. Am I right? Like the temperatures are similar to like the surface of Mars. It's just very not the nicest place. So was there anything you had to do or develop your team together with the technology side to make sure it flies well, captures the imagery, and works as you intend it to?
Oh yeah, I don't know where to begin actually from a technology perspective, right? So let's talk about the stratosphere for a second. So you're completely right. It's actually closer to, in terms of an environment, it's closer to Mars than to Earth. So there are challenges related to navigation, challenges related to protecting the equipment, et cetera, that we had to solve. And if you think about it, essentially a robot flies on a balloon. It's a pretty shaky environment as well, and very windy, if you think about it. So, stabilization to get very high resolution data from that height. As I said, we reach very high res, like 10 centimeter resolutions from that altitude, requires very sophisticated algorithms on the robot that are able to do that.
It's not like you're just sticking a DSLR camera to a weather balloon taking
it was that simple. I wish it was that simple. No, it's a complex device. The Swifty is a very complex device. It's essentially a robot, right? It flies in a very poetic way, in my opinion. We actually use the pull of the earth and the winds. So we're kind of it's almost integrated with nature, as integrated as technology can get in my head. So yeah, it's very complex, but it's also from idea perspective, it's simple enough that it also wins over many hearts of technologists and business leaders, thankfully, as well.
I feel like there's a couple different interesting things happening with high altitude balloons. I think there's another one on the internet side, Loon. Is there a lot of things, or is there just a couple things that they're starting to take advantage of this kind of technology space?
So yeah, there had been some, projects in the space for sure, like Loon. There are companies that try to do space travel with balloons, which is also very exciting for us. In terms of Earth imagery in particular and data about our planet, which we believe is going to be one of the key components on how we just solve climate change related applications and challenges, as we discussed. We are essentially the leading and the largest provider in terms of stratospheric imagery today.
Are we going to see balloons now like all over? Is that part of the future? Is this part of just in order to get this to happen?
First of all, you're very welcome to come to a launch campaign. I forgot where you're based, but
North Carolina, so not too far away from New York, but
I'm sure we have flights happening in North Carolina as well. I'll keep you posted, but you're very welcome to come. Our balloons fly too high for people to see them. They're almost like, from that perspective, they're like satellites. You don't see satellites, and you don't really see our balloons either.
Gotcha. And you're only flying during the day, or are you flying during the night as well?
No, we fly during the day mostly. So today we provide optical imagery, and for optical imagery to work, you need light. So
be a separate challenge to do a time lapse from up. No, yeah. A different challenge for sure. Well, for you, what do you see the future then? If you look at the technology where it is today, the use cases, if you look out 3-5 years from now, what would you predict?
So our core belief is that Earth imagery and high resolution Earth imagery is going to be on the forefront of how we solve challenges connected with urbanization, disasters, and climate change. So, and it is very important to include everyone and make sure that everybody has access to data that can save lives and build our future better and more sustainably. So we believe that our zero emissions approach will become the standard to getting data about our planet and how it's changing.
I love the future that you're painting and bringing to a reality. For those that want to learn more, you can head over to nearspacelabs.com. Thank you so much, Rema. It was great to have you on the series.
Yeah, thank you. This was a pleasure and such a fun conversation. Thank you.
We'll see you on the next episode of UpTech Report. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.